Well, Jesus knew it was his last week, so he made sure the most important things were done, the most important things were said, important relationships embraced, and ultimately his actions on this last week literally changed everything. On Holy Monday, he entered the temple and began to overturn tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. Jesus turns the tables. You know, this particular Monday may have felt like a Monday morning in the modern Western world, a time to re-engage the grind and get back to work. Jesus indeed walked into Jerusalem to take care of business. The meek and the mild and patient Jesus was nowhere to be found when he made a mess of the money changers. There was nothing soft and tender on display when Jesus, in prophet-like fashion, pronounced judgment on those selling pigeons in the temple. What do you have against pigeons? Well, the church I grew up in regularly had visiting musical groups play concerts. Great performers of their time, like the Galileans, who sang half their songs in Spanish. Big John Hall with a big voice. Andre Crouch, the worldwide gospel singer, got his start and sang at our church when he was just beginning. And then there was my favorite group, the Singing Deweys, because it was a multi-generational group, and the young girls who sang were my age, Cindy and Susie Dewey. They were my first crushes. I'll move on. These groups would have their albums and other merchandise in the lobby to sell. But this is not what Jesus was angry about, because these groups that came to our church would sell their albums so they could continue to play music and bless churches along the way. These groups actually helped my family appreciate music and worship and how it forms us. The place of worship in first century Israel, the place of worship in Israel and the auditorium of my church in Orangeville, California were totally different. Totally different. The reason Jesus is so upset on this Holy Monday was because the temple had become a place of commerce, taking advantage of people, opportunistic, and no longer a place of worship. Jerusalem was packed with pilgrims because of the Passover. They would have come to the temple to worship and offer sacrifices. And seizing on this opportunity, pigeon vendors set up shop. It might not have been too different from a sporting event today when sweaty salesmen walk the aisles and shout, "Peanuts! Get your peanuts here!" Except their motive was profit, not ministry. They didn't want to bless people, so they had a sacrifice. No, the demand was greater than the supply, so the prices were jacked up. "Pigeons! Get your pigeons here," they hollered. This was a far cry from what the place of worship should have been. And Jesus, in his last week, wanted to make it clear. He wanted to make it very clear, so he quotes two prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah. Isaiah, he quotes, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, for anyone. But you have made it a den of robbers." Profit gouging, price hiking. But that wasn't the main thing that Jesus was fired up about. Jesus' real point was how out of sync Israel's worship was with the great prophecy of what God's kingdom worship will look like at the end times. It's what Isaiah described when he says God's house, God's kingdom will be called a house of prayer for all nations, for everyone. The context of Isaiah 56 tells us, according to Isaiah's vision of end-time worship, of God's kingdom worship, the vision is foreigners and outcasts, male, females, free, slave, rich, poor, would be gathered and would join in worship. Not just people who could afford jacked up pigeon prices. All nations. Jesus entered a temple pulsing with price hiking and profit gouging, and the Spirit had left the building. And here's the lesson on this Holy Monday. Here's the lesson for all of us, or actually, here's a question. How well does our worship look like the prophetic vision of Isaiah and of Jesus? Is our worship, or our church, is a house of prayer for all people, the sojourner, the widow, the fatherless, the outcast? Do our church gatherings reflect the heart of God who gathers all people? This question couldn't be more relevant as it is as we approach Easter. When we assemble for worship this weekend, no one will be selling pigeons in the lobby. At least I don't think so. But if Jesus were to come, if he were to step into our churches this Sunday, would he feel the Spirit? Would he see us trying to impress in our Sunday best? It's Easter, we want to impress our community. Or would he find the outcasts and the misfits and the people who might not even feel like they belong there? Will he ask if he walks into our church, hey, where are the misfits, the marginalized, the outcasts? There's a song by U2 called If God Would Send His Angels. And the line in the song is, Jesus never let me down. Jesus always shows me the score. But then they put Jesus into show business. And now it's hard to get in the door. This Easter, will the misfits, the marginalized, the outcasts, will they be able to get in the door of our churches? Will they feel welcome walking through the doors? There's a story of a public sinner. He was excommunicated and forbidden entry into the church, and he took his complaint to Jesus. He says, Jesus, they won't let me in because I'm a sinner. And Jesus said, what are you complaining about? They won't let me in either. The Spirit had left the building on that Holy Monday. And Jesus clears the temple because he wants the Spirit back in. And here it is. After Jesus turned over the tables and got rid of the pigeon sellers, immediately Matthew says, the blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. The Spirit was back. This Easter, may our places of worship be a place where those the world and religion often rejects find healing and hope in Jesus' name. This Easter, let's make sure our churches are a place of prayer and healing for all peoples. This Easter, whatever church you attend, invite someone who feels like maybe they couldn't get in the door. And may they meet and experience the resurrection power of Christ. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you join me tomorrow on Holy Tuesday.